What's up, everybody? We are live for our final live stream of the year. And we've got one more live stream in there. A few hours, at least where I am. We're a few hours away from 2021. We hope everyone is doing well. And we'll just get right into this live stream. Hopefully, we'll have some more people join us. But we understand that, as everyone should, they are spending time. Hopefully, they're spending time with their family. Hopefully, they're relaxing. And hopefully, they're enjoying this last day of 2020. What a year it has been. What a year it has been. So let's do just a quick look at the live stream, and then we'll get into today's topic. Alexandra Mercuris in London, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Looking forward to celebrating New Year's Eve, obviously with my wife. We're very restricted in whom we can meet here, but we'll be meeting our families virtually, both my wife's family and my own, and we'll be celebrating. We have the champagne in the fridge, and we've got the ice ready to put it in its champagne bucket, and we will be celebrating the new year. And I hope, together with many of our viewers, I trust all of us are going to have a much better 2021 than we've had a 2020, because 2020 has been, shall we say, a challenging year.
All right. Well, we'll get into that. We'll look more at the year ahead than the year that passed, but obviously it's all connected. But we'll look forward to 2021, and we'll try to unpack what awaits us. But let's see who's joining us here on the live stream. Welcome to everybody that is watching this from Facebook as well. It's great to have you here. We are streaming to Facebook, not only YouTube, but also Facebook. And hopefully we'll get some more platforms as the year approaches. And we have a lot of good stuff coming out in 2021 from here at the Duran. So David Williams, good to have you here. Zenctus, Happy New Year, people. Hello, Zexus. Hello, Elizabetta. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year. To you from Amnesia, Happy New Year, Kim. Happy New Year, Kim. Let's see who else is here. AJ, good to have you here. Raul Pinto, hello, Raul. Let's see. Alan Watson, good to have you here. Alan Connie, good to have you. Darren Levy. Let's start it off with the super chat this time around before we get into the topic from Darren. Hope you both have a good new year, guys. Keep up the great work. And Alexandra, what is one of your favorite books on the bookshelf behind you? It has to be on the bookshelf behind you, Alexandra.
What is Adam Tooze is called Wages of Destruction. Awful title, terrible title, but it's a brilliant book about the German war economy in the Second World War. I learned an awful lot from it, so that's one example. But that's possibly my favorite book, my favorite reading at the moment. But I'm principally or primarily a historian, so I tend to read lots of history, and that's where it tends to be. I have to say, I also read a lot of ancient history. And there is another book there which is about the Roman Empire. It's called The Emperor in the Roman World. It looks at the institution of the emperor, and I've been reading that too. That's my recent reading.
All right, great. All right, Maddie.
Can I just say quickly something about this? Very, very quickly. I mean, I saw recently, I think it was in the Federalist, that all kinds of people inside the Beltway are trying to pretend that they're intellectuals by getting sort of backgrounds which have lots of books in them, and that they're not really real. May I reassure you, my library is absolutely real. It is absolutely. It's the accumulation of books I've built up over a lifetime. There are many, many more books upstairs, and my wife also has a very, very big literature library too.
All right, great. Yes, those books are real, unlike what you'll see on CNN and MSNBC, where they throw a few books back there. They actually have people designing that stuff that come in, interior designers that come in there and try to put these really smart books, like autobiographies from like Oprah or Barack Obama, so that everyone looks very neoliberal chic, as they're speaking to Rachel Maddow or Chris Cuomo. But anyway, all right.
Artwork behind books behind Alexander, they are absolutely the real thing. I mean,
these are real. Today I have, I think, one of my favorite. This is probably my favorite painting right here, which is the Andy Warhol, the famous Campbell's soup. Andy Warhol actually did what he did 32 of those, and that when he did a first exhibition in Los Angeles of that, and people were completely shocked at his style. Before you had, like you would have the still lifes of the Impressionists, and they would paint the flowers or the vases or something like that. And here comes Andy Warhol painting a soup can, and people were just kind of like, "What the hell's this guy doing?" But back then, the art movement in the U.S. was amazing. Really something else.
Absolutely.
Back then in the U.S. Really, really incredible stuff and incredible artists. Anyway, let's get back on topic and look at the year 2021 ahead. Hello, Maddie from Florida. How are you? Mark, good to have you here. Moon Swan Silverlight, great to have you here. Cecilia from Poland. How's everyone doing in Poland? Let's see. West Queensland, Australia. Sky is falling. Good to have you here. Let's see. Mark Fuller. Lechat, how are you doing, Lechat? Slovenia. New York City is in the house. Molly Reed from Harper's Ferry is in the house. Awesome. A lot of people from Facebook. Jackie Duncan, great. I've caught another live. How are you doing, Jackie? Good to have you here. Hello, Sherry. Good morning to you in Iowa. Awesome. All right, Alexander, 2020 is over. We have 2021. And on the thumbnail, I put an image of Klaus Schwab, and he's sitting in back of planet Earth. And I put that image on there because to me, it kind of symbolizes that as bad as 2020 was, and it was a bad year, no doubt about it, an incredible year in news. One thing that we did realize was that a lot of masks came off. A lot of people that were in the shadows came out of the shadows. And I think in 2020, we have a better understanding who we're up against and what we're up against going into 2021. And on all levels. I don't mean only with the pandemic, with politics, with the people that supposedly we vote for and are supposed to represent us in whatever country you're in. With economics, with the movement in Bitcoin and how people are flocking to Bitcoin now, there's been an erosion of trust. We've definitely seen a type of class warfare, the elites, the globalists against the people, the lockdowns, the destruction of small and medium-sized businesses, the tech censorship and the tech oligarchy. All these things have come to pass in 2020. And I guess you could say the catalyst of it all would undoubtedly be US President Donald Trump. I think that was the person that broke everyone's brain. And I think that forced all of these people to come out of the shadows. Of course, the pandemic was a driving force as well. But I think above and beyond everything, it was this larger than life figure of Donald Trump and what he represents that got the globalists to come out of their hole and to say, you know what, now we're going to make our move. But we see them now. We know exactly what we're up against. We know what the World Economic Forum is. We know what big tech is up to. We know what censorship is. We're seeing it right in front of us. We're experiencing lockdowns. We're experiencing all these things. But at least we know. What do you make of that assessment that I've given?
I think it's absolutely spot on. I think now we have seen how the world really is run. I mean, we've seen very, very manipulated politics. I should say, started my other channel. You can probably find it. Alex will tell you a bit more about this. And the first video
in the description box down below, everybody, you'll find the link.
Exactly. But I was looking at a speech that Joe Biden, a virtual speech, obviously, that Joe Biden gave on Monday about foreign policy. And I think the thing that really stood out for me was, firstly, he didn't actually say anything very much, but also this exhausted figure, this stilted language. It's extraordinary, impossible to believe that such a person would be the product of a properly functioning democracy. That he's now going to be president, as it now looks increasingly, is a testament to me of the reality about how the world is run. But of course, though, these people we're going to talk about have managed to manipulate things to an extraordinary degree. over the course of 2020. There is resistance to them, and it is growing. And many people have seen the reality of the world. They've also seen the faces of some of these people. I mean, for me, one of the most striking images of 2020 was the Senate hearings with people like Dorsey and Zuckerberg there, which was really quite remarkable, actually. I mean, they were extraordinary to see them and to look back at them. So people have seen this, and there is a backlash, and the backlash is taking many different forms. And obviously, Donald Trump, as you say, has been the great catalyst. He has been an epochal figure because, to be very clear, the world that existed before Trump is the world we are still in. I mean, all this control existed previously. It took Donald Trump to come along and to expose it, to show it to everybody as it is, by his using the very important and powerful democratic elements that still exist in the system. But it's still there, and it's Donald Trump who's exposed it. But we mustn't forget that there are other people, there are other places too, where, if you like, the fight back continues. We see it in Britain, where the whole Brexit episode has played itself out over 2019 and 2020, and we now have, if you like, a 3/4 or 4/5 Brexit. We're not quite there yet, but we've managed to move very firmly in that direction. And we see it in other places also. So, and we see it with, as you said, with the development of Bitcoin and those kind of things. We see it in the alternative media spaces that are struggling to make themselves heard, which people do come to. And we see it in the emergence of popular governments in places in Europe that take a line that is antagonistic to that of the powers that be. We saw it with the Hungarian and Polish vetoes of the EU budget, for example. So the resistance, the backlash is there. But I think it's now quite clear that we have, on the one hand, a world system that is becoming increasingly more controlled, more manipulated all the time, and which has a very definite agenda behind it also. And we see also gathering resistance to it. So the question is, which of these two forces will win out, and what will happen over 2020 to see how that plays out there too.
All right. So I'm going to ask you just one question, Alexandra, then let's go into the live stream. I'll answer the super chats, and then I'll go into the live stream and just take questions.
Yes.
And we'll just kind of have a very open chat about how you guys see 2021 shaping up.
Yes.
And we'll try to get to some conclusions as to how we're feeling about the year that passed and the year that's ahead of us. But my one question to you, Alexander, is, going into 2021, how do you feel? Do you think that do you think that things are going to go better, worse? Are you positive about things? Are you 50-50? How do you think society is as well? On my personal view, I would say I'm definitely in the middle. I mean, some days I'm feeling like, people are waking up and things are really changing. Other days I feel like, geez, no one is waking up and no one is changing. And the censorship, the surveillance is just getting, more and more and more, to the point of overwhelming. So, I mean, it's definitely, I'm going back and forth, but I just want to get your take, and then we'll jump into some of the super chats and some of the live stream as well.
Right. I think 2021 is going to be very interesting, because I think this political battle that we're talking about, it's not just a political battle, it's a battle being fought out at many levels, is going to start to develop and grow stronger. I think that what we will see in 2021 is, firstly, something that was also established by 2020, that the United States remains the pivotal country, and the key battles are going to continue to be played out there. I think that, we talk about the rise of China, we talk about, the new the second Cold War and all of this, I think it's quite clear, notwithstanding all of that, that it's the US which still makes the political weather. So we will see what happens in the US. And I think what we're going to see in the US, and you can already see the evidence of this now, already in the period that we're talking about, with Trump's vetoes of the defense bill and of the relief bill and all of this, is that there is a determination on the part of the political class, who are very much part of this structure that we're talking about, to return politics to normal as they see it, to the kind of world that existed before Donald Trump burst onto the scene. And they want to go back to that world. They want to basically push Trump and what he represents to the margins, and they want to continue to pursue the agenda they had previously. So that's what they're going to be all about. So we're going to see an attempt in the United States, I think, to sort of return to normal politics and, if you like, normal arguments. So, you have the Republicans saying, that they're the party of, budget, careful budgeting, the Democrats being the welfare party. We will have all of these battles, which we now see are really artificial battles and are not really where the real struggles are happening. That will play out. But at the same time, as we will see, the attempt to return politics to normal, we will see that in the United States, that's going to prove incredibly difficult, because too many people now see the world as it is, and we will see growing political conflicts. I will not be surprised if we start to see new media spaces emerging at an ever-growing rate, and if we also start to see people starting to organize more at sort of grassroots level and putting forward their own ideas and circulating there. And I predict Donald Trump will have an important role to play also. So that is what I think is going to happen. We need to focus on the United States. I think lots of things are going to go on happening there in 2021. I think that in the short to medium term, I think the political class, I use my words carefully, and what it represents is going to prevail in the short-term battles, but over time, the problems are going to grow, the opposition to it is going to accumulate, and we will see how it copes with that as the deepening conflicts begin to play themselves out. So in the short term, I'm a pessimist. In the medium to long term, I'm an optimist.
All right, let's do some let's get to some super chats here, and then we'll jump into the live stream and see what people are saying, what they're asking. We'll see what the comments and what the feel is right now. Let's see. We have we already did Darren's super chat. Raul says, do you think we will have a Black Swan event in 2021? Happy New Year to all.
The thing about Black Swan events, first of all, Happy New Year to you. The thing about a Black Swan events is that they are almost by definition unpredictable. You can never be sure of what they will be until they come. And I think Black Swan events are going to become increasingly common. They may come in the economy, they may come in the financial system, they may come in politics, they could come in all kinds of ways. But sooner or later, one will come, despite, as I said, the attempt of the political class to return things to the appearance of normality. The kind of ritual battles that we see being played out in Congress and in the media, which it is quite clear more and more people are becoming increasingly less interested in and less are relating increasingly little to. By the way, I predict that in the United States, if we're looking at where the touchstone of the conflict is going to come, immigration is going to be a very important issue. I go back to that speech of Biden's that he gave on Monday. And it was very, very clear to me that he, or rather to be more precise, his backers are very intent on reversing many of the changes that Trump introduced in his immigration policies. They are not essentially concerned about protection of borders in the way that he was.
All right. Moon Swan Silverlight says, Happy New Year, lads. Hope you had a great Christmas. Thank you very much, Moon Swan Silverlight. Happy New Year to you as well. Konstantinos Stavropoulos is a new member of the Duran community. Welcome, Konstantinos. Great to have you here. Hunting Dawn says, Happy New Year. Greetings from Hungary. Hello, Hunting Dawn. All our best to everybody in Hungary as well. Lechat is a new member of the Duran community. Hello, Lechat. Good to have you here again. Let's see. Alan Watson says, will France and Germany increasingly argue with each other?
Yes, I think that is now baked in the cake. That's going to be another thing, because, of course, you have to know both countries to understand that why opposition between them, conflict between them, is something that isn't just going to play out at the elite level. It's also going to play out increasingly at a popular level, because in both countries, both in France and in Germany, there is a very strong integrationist, globalist, pro-EU elite. In both countries, there is growing opposition at popular level. Now, we know a lot about that in France. We've seen the Gilets jaunes. We've recently done a program, Alex and I, in which we discussed some of the political challenges Emmanuel Macron is facing, and the fact that he's now trying to reach out to certain members of Marine Le Pen's family, I think, in a fairly transparent device to try to split Marine Le Pen's support. But that shows that, if you like, there is a sovereigntist movement, very powerful in France, and that's going to affect elite perceptions in France. Also, the French elite, the globalist elite, is pure globalist. They want to see a very much tighter integration of the EU based on EU institutions than the German elite does. The German elite, though it is also globalist, it's globalist in a slightly different way, in that it wants to see this globalism follow a more sort of German mercantilist approach, one where Germany is able to export its goods and services, or primarily its goods, around the world, and where big German industrial groups do very well. So there's a conflict between elites, and at the same time, in Germany and in France, there is growing popular suspicion of each other. The French are becoming concerned that Germany is becoming over-dominant in the EU and continuously wins battles against France. The Germans, and I'm talking now about people at popular level, the public, are becoming increasingly wary of a program of an EU project, which means that they are having to make ever greater sacrifices in order to sustain. And we had a very strange period in 2020 where, in Germany, Merkel, for a time, seemed to see her popularity revive, and we seemed to see a return to politics as normal almost. That period seems to be ending. Her popularity again is falling, always an important sign, indicator of the way things are turning out in Germany. There is a growing feeling of economic crisis, and there's also a perception that Germany's approach to the pandemic, which was much praised, has started to unravel. So there's growing criticism again of Merkel at public level, growing concern about the things that she's doing, and a rise in national sentiment in Germany, which is taking an anti-integrationist form, which conflicts with that of the French elites. So we're going to see Germany and France finding it increasingly difficult to keep this bicycle of, this sort of tandem bicycle of the EU going. We're going to see more conflicts between Germany and France as things go forward. And we're also seeing two leaders, Merkel, who is now, I think, definitely going at the end of September, but no obvious person to take over from her. Macron, who's looking increasingly unsteady, unclear who's going to take over from him. So we're going to see problems at the leadership level, problems at the elite level, and the populations of both countries starting to rebel, both against their own elites and against the perception they each have of the other.
Okay, we have a £10 super chat. No name though to this account, but the question is: 2021 is going to be the year of uprisings. Trump's imminent re-election. Watch for January 6th will embolden a lot of people.
Well, there could very well be certainly protests. I mean, I'm not someone who, at the moment, supports. Well, I absolutely don't want violent revolutions or anything of that kind. Because I mean, I saw political violence in Greece in my childhood, and that's made me understand very well how dangerous that can be and how that can get completely out of control. So I'm hoping that's not going to happen. But certainly growing popular resistance, that we will see. And Brexit, by the way, let's not underestimate the importance of Brexit. Brexit shows how important that is. The most interesting thing, by the way, which we haven't touched on about Brexit, is that until fairly recently, Britain appeared to be a 50-50 country. Now that Brexit has happened, support for it has risen. It's around 60%.
All right. From John James, Happy New Year. Thank you for all the excellent content this year. Thank you very much, John James, for that super chat. From Mark Hewitt, if the NHS does not roll out the shot before the third wave, will this be the event where the NHS finally loses its god-like status?
Well, I should say that as somebody who uses the NHS and has, in fact, benefited greatly from the NHS, I mean, I would hope that, it continues at least in some form. But what I'm going to say is this. When the pandemic began back, I remember when there was the first lockdown back in March and April, every couple of days, people used to go out, British people used to go out at specific hours of the day. And you'd see people applaud and cheer for the NHS. And they would stick posters on the windows of their houses saying how much they supported the NHS. You don't see anything like that anymore. I mean, that doesn't happen. That has completely disappeared. You don't see pro-NHS posters, or at least if you do, they're the sort of old ones left over from the March-April period. And you certainly don't see people coming out and cheering for the NHS anymore. So it's difficult to gauge what feeling is, but I do get the sense that people are far less trusting of all institutions with respect to the pandemic than they were back in March and April.
All right, guys, don't forget, hit that like, smash that like if you like, smash the like if you like what you see. If you like this stream, hit the like. That really helps the video get out there. From Darren Levy, a £5 super chat. Do you see Biden and Johnson trying to form a partnership by UK agreeing to back Biden's next regime change war? Well, that's an interesting question.
That is an extremely interesting question.
The UK will back any US.
Absolutely.
Change war,
Absolutely.
Regardless of the president.
Can I make a very quick observation about Boris Johnson? And this I remember so very well. Way back before he became foreign secretary, when he was still a backbench MP and also a rather good columnist for the Daily Telegraph, he penned an article hailing the Syrian and Russian liberation of Palmyra. This is this famous town in Syria, the ancient city in Syria that had been captured by ISIS. And he penned an article congratulating the Syrians and the Russians for liberating Palmyra from ISIS. And this provoked a certain amount of criticism for him because, of course, all the usual people said that he was being an Assad apologist, and they were talking about how he was backing the Russians and all that. And then, of course, that article also gave rise to expectations that he was going to see his way as foreign secretary. And in fact, there was quite a lot of talk about it when he became foreign secretary, that he would seek a way of patching up problems with Russia, and that we'd start to see a change in Britain's policies in the Middle East. And I read an article, I think it was in the Telegraph, or it might have been the Times, about how just before he became foreign secretary, he had a meeting, Boris Johnson had a meeting with the intelligence chiefs. And after that, after what he was told by the intelligence chiefs, he did a complete 100%, 180-degree U-turn, and of course became a supporter of the wars in the Middle East, of the strong policies towards Russia, and all of that. Now, I don't know what happened at the meeting. One can guess, one can speculate. But what it does show is the enormous inbuilt pressure within the British political system, which will affect any political leader and which will push them in a pro-regime direction if the United States wants to pursue it. I don't think that Boris Johnson will resist any attempt by the United States to pursue regime change in any country. So if the United States wants to do something in the Middle East, or wants to do something in Eastern Europe, or wants to do something in Latin America, Britain will back it. Of that, I have no doubt at all. It will back it irrespective of who the Prime Minister is. Back in the 1980s, when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, it was different. She was vocal in her opposition to the US invasion of Grenada, for example, this Caribbean island that briefly had a left-wing government, which the United States sent its Marines into and overthrew following a coup there. So she could oppose, she had the authority, the political authority, and the political strength to do that. No British Prime Minister now has that to anything like the same degree. So I don't think it will be a agreement between Biden and Johnson. I think it will just be Britain continuing to support the United States in those sort of policies.
All right, from Sparky, although I'm well able to handle a post-apocalyptic world, I hope President Trump uses the Insurrection Act and saves the world instead. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you as well, Sparky. The Insurrection Act. Interestingly enough, Mike Pence was supposed to, on January 6th, after he was finished with his chores in Congress with the certification of the electors, he was supposed to take a trip around the world, is what they dubbed it. He was going to go to Poland, I believe Poland, and then Germany, Israel, and I think the UAE or Qatar. And he was going to do this trip on January 6th, and he was going to come back pretty much on January 19 or 20. And that trip has been canceled, interestingly enough. I don't know what to make of that. But anyway, we also have the flip side where we received some legal filings, Alexandra, from Louis Gohmert. Yeah. And those legal filings show that Mike Pence is not on board with going with alternate electors. Actually, that lawsuit states that Mike Pence will not do it. So we have a little bit of conflicting narratives there. But either way, from Sparky, he hopes that Trump uses the Insurrection Act. I don't think that will be the case, but we'll see.
We will see. I mean, Trump is nothing if not unpredictable, but I don't expect it. And as for Pence, I say straightforwardly, he is, as far as I'm concerned, what Russians call a system politician. He's been very loyal to Trump during the period of Trump's presidency, but that's in partly, I think, because he wants to be the Republican Party's candidate in 2024, and he wants Trump's base to support him. But I think that we will not see him taking any step at all as vice president that will ruffle in any way any feathers on the part of the political class. I think anybody who expects that from Pence is going to be disappointed.
Yeah. I mean, I think if a surprise is going to come on the 6th, I don't think it'll be something along the lines of the Insurrection Act. It'll be something else. I don't know what that is, but it'll be something else that changes things. I don't think it'll be something like that, but I don't know. Like you said, Trump is unpredictable, but we'll see. It's right around the corner. We're only about a week away, so we'll soon find out what exactly has been going on.
Precisely.
From Sky is Falling. $20 super chat. 2021, the year of the emperor with no clothes. Only stability can avert serious unrest and the further breakdown of Western society. How will a Biden admin attempt to put the genie back in the bottle? It won't. It won't.
It won't. That's the absolute point. And I think emperor without, the emperor has no clothes. I think that is brilliant. That exactly sums up what happened in 2020. For the first time, people saw that the emperor has no actual clothes. You have all of these people, the people who talk on the mainstream TV channels, all those people, they talk about democracy, they talk about human rights, they talk about elections and all that. And we now realize that isn't quite what they actually think or believe anymore, and it's not really how the system works. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to take away from people that memory, and the memory, as I said, of what happened during the election when Zuckerberg and Dorsey came before the Senate.
Yeah, I'm looking at the live stream and going off of these last two super chats. I will say one thing, and I see from Quickle Martin says, 4 million armed and angry patriots will do the trick. Going off of that live stream question, Alexandra, I was also watching a Tim Pool video, and he was lining up along the same lines as what we're saying right now, that he doesn't believe stuff like the Insurrection Act. I'm paraphrasing what he said will actually be it. But he did say something that I think definitely rings true. And he said something along the lines of what Quickie Martin is saying here. He says if you have 6 million people who come out on in January, and that's what's going to happen on the 6th, on the 5th or the 6th, that come out for that protest that's going to be taking place. If you have a lot of people, that will do the trick.
Oh, yes.
And I think that's a very, very smart and astute point. I think if you have a mass surge of a lot of people, I'm not talking a couple 100,000, I'm talking in the millions, come out and make their voice heard, then I do think something will happen. I don't know. Once again, I don't know what it is or how it'll change things, but the voice of the people in mass at one place at one time definitely may change the dynamics.
Absolutely, no question about it. I mean, if you go back to the 1960s and you recall, how the civil rights movement gained traction and how the anti-war movement in the 1960s gained traction, you could see that. And 6 million, of course, if it was anything like that, well, it would dwarf those events of the 60s. I'm going to say something else. One of the fundamental differences is that if you go back to the 1960s, what made a difference there was that protests started to extend beyond what you might call the activist class. In other words, people who were outside that kind of class, who didn't usually start to protest, began protesting. I get the sense that this time there are an awful lot more people who feel strongly enough or strongly motivated to do that this time round than there were in the 60s. And that is the thing that really frightens the political class. If they sense that they are losing the support of people, as I said, beyond the activist class, beyond the kind of people, the sort of people who go about their lives, who, carefully vote, who pay their taxes, who work hard, who bring up their families, those kind of people, when those sort of people start protesting, especially if they protest peacefully, the whole system shakes.
Yeah, very true. All right, we have a bunch of super chats to get through here. Let's see. Robin Jones, the new member of the Duran community. Welcome, Robin, to the community. Good to have you on board. From Sparky, globalists, weaponized Karens, and Nurse Ratchets. From One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Nurse Ratchet, right?
That's right.
All right. Thank you very much, Sparky, for that super chat. InfoSeeker.Maduro, DKK200. Happy New Year. Will the revolution be televised?
Oh, everything happens on television nowadays. It's just
the question is, will big tech let us see it?
Well, exactly. Well, that is a very, very good question. Absolutely, it is. Yes. Well, we'll see.
We'll see. From Kenneth214, $10 super chat. Thank you very much, Kenneth. From Mark Hewitt, if Biden is inaugurated and reverses Trump's tax cuts, what should the UK government do to attract the fleeing billionaires from California and New York?
Well, I think the billionaires, maybe some of them, perhaps, if they come to London, and by the way, many do. I should say one of the things to understand is that New York and London, the city of London and Wall Street, are extremely closely integrated with each other already. So, to my absolute knowledge, a lot of the billionaires, in Washington and New York. In New York and London, do frequently cross the Atlantic in their private jets and meet with each other. And many of them have properties in London. Many of the New Yorkers have properties in London already. So, be aware of that. And of course, if we're talking about the tech companies, well, we do actually have, obviously nothing like on the same scale, quite a substantial tech industry here in Britain too. But I'm not particularly sure that we really want to attract too many people like that to Britain. I mean, given what they do in the US, I'm not sure we want them over here doing the same to us. We've got plenty of people like that, perhaps too many people like that here already. But I think that in terms of what Britain is going to do, what the Conservative government is talking about doing, whether it will do it is another matter, but they have been talking about cutting business taxes in order to make Britain a more attractive place for business anyway. That is very, very much on their agenda. And of course, if the United States starts to push its taxes up, which, by the way, I predict it will, then I think you will see that perhaps Britain becomes a more attractive investment destination. But we will see how things work out in the United States and in Britain too, because I ought to quickly say there are some people in Britain who worry an awful lot about the scale of the budget deficit and about the fact that Britain is now very heavily in debt because of its economic responses to the pandemic. So there's also some pressure in Britain to put up taxes too. That does not seem to be the prevailing view here, but we will see who wins out on that one.
Okay, we have from Simon Ennifer, is Donald Trump the American Gracchus, and will he and the Republic share the same fate as Rome? Tiberius Gracchus?
There were two.
The Roman Emperor?
There were two. There was Tiberius Gracchus and there was Gaius. Absolutely, there were the two, the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius. Tiberius and Gaius, of course, they were both murdered. So, let's hope that. But, having said that, it's important to say this because, of course, both of them wanted to carry out important reforms to benefit people. I mean, this is a time in the late Republic, the second century BC. A time in the late Republic when wealth was becoming increasingly concentrated in an oligarchy of power that had managed to gain control of the Roman Republic's institutions and which is excluding people from a voice in decisions. And both Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus wanted to make changes to this. They wanted to carry out land reform changes. They wanted also to open up the political system. And they both came into faced massive opposition from the elites. And both of them, as I said, were killed. And that set the scene for Rome's descent into civil wars, and eventually the establishment of the dictatorship of Caesar Augustus and the conversion of Rome from a constitutional republic into an empire. Well, I hope that is not the trajectory the US follows, but the comparison between Trump and Gracchus is a very good one, because Gracchus, the two brothers Gracchus, did try to carry out reforms. They were blocked by the respective oligarchies in their countries. And this did set the scene for much more political conflict to follow. In Rome, it ended up, as I said, in a dictatorship and an empire. I hope in the United States, which has, in my opinion, much stronger democratic traditions than Rome did, and of course it's a completely different society. I hope, and I, by the way, predict it will go the other way.
All right, Andrew Cole says, keep up the great work. Best wishes from Newport Pagnell. Thank you very much, Andrew, for that. Let's see. Let me scroll through some more super chats here. From Life of Brian, do you anticipate a return of state nullification movement? I don't see institutional credibility making a comeback anytime soon.
Well, we shall see. I mean, that's the other thing to say. I mean, the United States has this enormous treasure chest of political movements, of political ideas going all the way back to the foundation of the Republic. And it's possible. I don't personally see that one coming back. I see things, going in a different direction. I think that what we will see instead is an attempt by people increasingly to reclaim the Republic and to bring to get back control, which was the slogan that was used, if you like, during Brexit. I think that's more likely what we will see in the United States, but it's entirely possible that people will refer back to some of the events that took place in the 19th century in the United States and elsewhere.
All right, from Simon Ennifer, how can Eurozone countries survive the coming COVID depression, given they can't print money as freely as non-Eurozone countries?
Well, very good question. I think we will see what happens. I mean, Britain, I think, if you're talking about QE, does have the means to carry out QE. I mean, Britain has the oldest financial system in the world. It sounds extraordinary to say this, but the British currency was actually founded in the 6th century AD. I mean, it actually precedes the establishment of the kingdom, the United Kingdom. But anyway, regardless of that brief history lesson, I think some countries have those means, others obviously don't. But I'm not convinced that printing money anyway is the right way forward. I think that there are lots of things you can do which do not involve printing money. Printing money going in for QE, it seems to me, is the oligarchy's solution. The people that we're talking about, the people who run, the World Economic Forum, that's what they like. They want us to sort of print money and to approach things in that way. I think a much more credible and logical way of, moving forward economically is to start doing some of the things that Donald Trump and other people were trying to do in other countries. If you're talking about Hungary, rebuild your own industries, support businesses there, provide tax breaks, provide investment, do that kind of thing. And then, if you start building up a virtuous cycle, you start getting more money in the system because it becomes more self-generating. You can then invest that money in, good things, and you have a much more solid economic foundation than endless money printing. If we're looking at the EU, you'd have thought that all that money printing would have achieved an economic boom. Well, look at the EU now, or at least the Eurozone part of it. We did a recent program about Greece, and in fact, it's making things worse. So I'm not convinced that money printing is the right way forward anyway.
All right, from Flying Boar, will Nord Stream 2 be finished?
Yes,
I did a video on this.
we've actually did a video about this. It's really very interesting how the Germans. I should make it very clear. I go to Germany often, and I like Germans. So when I seem to criticise them, always please bear that in mind. But it's very interesting to see how the German leadership, if you like, always in the end puts its own interests first. Because on the one hand, they've been really horrible to the Russians this year on all sorts of issues, and the Navalny affair has really annoyed the Russians to a degree that it's difficult to explain to outsiders the extent to which the Russians are angry with the Germans about it. But at the same time, the Germans have made it absolutely clear they want Nord Stream 2, because they still want the Russians to go on providing them with cheap natural gas, because that's the way that they can both meet their carbon targets, because of course the Germans are very keen on meeting carbon targets, and at the same time keep their industries competitive and operating, because natural gas has a very small carbon footprint compared to other conventional fuels. And at the same time, it's a cheap and easily available form of energy, especially if you do what the Germans have done, which is commit yourself to closing down your nuclear power industry. So the Germans will want Nord Stream 2 completed. And they've already finished, over the last few days, the last remaining stretch of it, which was on German territory. The only part of it that needs to be built now is the part under the sea, which goes through Denmark. The Danes have given permission. The Russians will do it. They have all the ships there ready to do it. And it will get done. And it will get done because it's in Germany's interests to do it. The Russians are far more skeptical about the project. They're very angry with the Germans. They will do it too, because from their point of view, why not? It gives them another market in Germany. It also is a political win for them against the US. But it's the Germans who are driving it, and the Germans who will get it done. And Heiko Maas, who is the German foreign minister, who has been the most vocally anti-Russian of German ministers. Perhaps that's maybe a bit unfair to him, because again, I don't think he perhaps fully appreciates how badly some of his comments have gone down in Moscow. But he was very much the lead minister on the Navalny affair, for example. Anyway, Heiko Maas has made it absolutely clear that Nord Stream 2 will be finished, and finished it will be.
All right. From Sparky, with Biden, I feel bad for the Mideast. They saw a glimmer of peace only to have the tunnel collapse on them before they reached the exit.
I completely agree. It's very interesting to read Biden's things. I mean, I watched this, as I say, bizarre broadcast that he gave on Monday. Very interesting, by the way, that, how empty of content it also was. And I noticed something which is really interesting, which was that he never said anything about the problem of jihadi terrorism and violence in the Middle East. That still goes on. I mean, all those jihadi terrorist movements, Al Qaeda, ISIS, they're still there. So, he said he had nothing to say about those at all, nothing. And he didn't really make very clear what his policy was. But it's very clear, nonetheless, that the Middle East is going to be very much the focus of the Biden-Harris administration. Lloyd Austin, who's the U.S. Defense Secretary, he made his career in the Middle East as a military officer and as head of Central Command. So we're going to see the United States focusing very much on the Middle East, causing lots of problems there. And I agree, part of the world that was finally seeing glimmers of peace, and it's all going to go into reverse.
Yep. Life of Brian. Does the elite manager sub-political class understand how widely and deeply they are hated, or do they think it's back to normal?
I think the great shock they got in 2016 with Trump's election and with the Brexit referendum is that it suddenly made it obvious, clear to them that there are many, many, many people in the United States and in Britain and in Europe also, by the way, who do not like the elite at all. I think the elite had not realized this. I think it was a shock to them. I think they are at some level aware of it now. And I think many of the reactions we have seen in the United States over the course of 2020 can be seen almost as panic responses to try to close everything down, get back to normal, treat all this as an awful bad dream, and try and forget it and go back to normal. But I think deep down, they know it now, and it scares them.
You mean to go back to Obama?
Go back to Obama.
Not normal, because they're saying the exact opposite. They're saying there is no back to normal.
I know.
There's like they want to get back to the Obama.
They want to get back to the Obama world. That for them is the optimal period. Obama, late Clinton, the sort of world that was that's the kind of world they want to revert back to. If they could find a way of putting us all in a time machine and taking us back there, and having the last 5 years disappear, that's what they would do.
Yeah, back to the Obama days, but just with an app that tracks you everywhere you go.
Exactly. Well, because
that's what they want.
But that's the point, because you're not trusted anymore. I mean, they don't trust you anymore to follow what they say. So because they don't trust you, they have to start doing things like that instead.
Sparky, President Trump started Korea in the right direction. It's possible that Korea continues in that direction and becomes peacefully unified. Let's hope.
I agree, actually. I mean, I once went to Korea. This is a couple of, a long time ago. So I'm not going to pretend that I know the country well, but I have been to South Korea, not to North Korea. And my overwhelming feeling there is that in spite of the divisions, there is very much an awareness on the part of the Korean people that they are a people and a nation. It's also a very impressive place. South Korea is a very, very impressive place. And my own sense is that there will come a point, I think increasingly we're getting close to that point, when the Koreans are going to start making decisions for themselves rather than rely on what people like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris tell them to do. So given that the Koreans have an enormous incentive, it seems to me, to open up their country to each other, to sort of bring the two parts of their countries together. And since they obviously have a massive interest on both sides of the border in avoiding wars, I would have thought that it's quite possible that some kind of a rapprochement leading to eventual unification takes place, which does not involve the United States. But we will see.
Okay, from Sulia Felix, Happy New Year. On January 6th, we will see objections by several senators at the pro-Biden electoral votes from the disputed states. Josh Hawley is the first one to come out with a statement, and a very strong statement. And because of that statement, Alexandra, he was attacked by Walmart.
Absolutely.
As well as Amy Klobuchar, but Walmart.
I know.
Department store.
I know.
Walmart actually attacked a U.S. senator.
I know.
Coming out with a statement.
Quite extraordinary. Can I just say, I think that is a momentous event, because it's also, in effect, a rebellion against Mitch McConnell. Because remember, Mitch McConnell has congratulated Biden and was basically trying to get all the people in the Senate, all the Republicans in the Senate, to basically refuse to support any moves by House Republicans. So one Republican senator has broken that line, and bear in mind, it only needs one. And it looks as if more may follow. So that is a sign that Mitch McConnell's grip on Senate Republicans is starting to crack. And that, I think, is a very, very big event, irrespective of what happens on the 6th of January.
Or on the 5th in Georgia.
On the 5th in Georgia, exactly.
Which is big. But, I think that McConnell is actually very comfortable being a strong minority. Like we say in Greece all the time, the best position to be in is to be a strong minority, not a weak majority.
Absolutely, totally agree with that. That's exactly what I think too. But as I said, in order to be a strong minority, you have to be a strong minority. If you're a divided minority, because some people are starting to question your decisions, then of course Mitch McConnell's place suddenly begins to look much less comfortable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a power struggle between McConnell and Trump. There's definitely a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on between McConnell and Trump.
Absolutely, there is, and that is an important fact, and we will see how it plays out.
The masks are off, that's for sure. From Sparky, in 1961, VP Nixon successfully counted Hawaii's alternate electors instead of the certified ones. VPs choosing which set of electors to use. Is it new? And Sparky has a follow-up to that, which is connected to it. It says alt electors were for Kennedy. Nixon chose them.
Absolutely true. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, can I just say a lot of these stories, all these things being unprecedented. People really do need to know a little bit more about American history. They would know that they're not unprecedented at all. Even disputed elections, and I'm talking about disputed presidential elections, are not unheard of in America before. So I think that a lot of these attempts to basically pressure people by saying that these events, things like this have never happened before, and it's outrageous that they're even being talked about. The United States, the American Republic, has been through these problems in the past. If they are problems. And of course, the founders who drafted the Constitution always anticipated that there would be conflicts. If they hadn't anticipated conflicts, if they hadn't wanted conflicts, they wouldn't have created a republic. They'd have created a monarchy or something like that. So, I mean, it's always important to remember these things. I mean, so, when you read, as I do sometimes, in National Review, for example, which is very much a mainstream, Republican GOP place, and all this is outrageous and unprecedented. Earlier Americans would certainly not have said so or thought so.
Okay, Frank Castle sent us a $4 super sticker. Thank you very much, Frank, for that. From Falvey Pollard, I don't think Pence and Hawkeye are going to go to the mat for Trump. Lip service to try and stay in the good graces of deplorables.
Absolutely, completely agree. That's entirely right, I'm sure.
Let's see what else. Here we have Magnesia Shan says, thank you, Alex and Alexander. Thank you very much, Magnesia, for that super chat. From, let's see, we did the Sparky one on Nixon. No, we didn't do that one. Sparky says, Nixon chose them. He saw certain ones were in error. So Nixon chose them. He saw certain ones were in error.
Absolutely. I mean, that happened, as Sparky says correctly, in 1961. The point is that, of course, it's not now Nixon, it's Pence, and I don't see Pence doing anything that is going to rock any boats. I mean, I have to say this straight away. I mean, if it's a choice between establishment Republicans and loyalty to Donald Trump, I think he will go with establishment Republicans. This is my own personal opinion.
Don't look at what Pence has said or anything like that in the past or any of that. Look at his actions.
Exactly.
Michael Flynn was taken out, yes, by Obama and Biden and Comey and all these guys in the swamp, but Pence played a key role in getting Michael Flynn out. And to me, Michael Flynn was the one decision that really hobbled Trump's White House going forward.
Absolutely.
Pence played a key role in that.
Absolutely. If Pence had come out and spoken publicly and made it absolutely clear that he fully supported Flynn, then Flynn would have remained National Security Advisor.
He did the exact opposite.
He did the exact opposite.
So Pence, I don't have anything against the guy. He's been in support of Trump every now and then, and he's done a good job as vice president, you could say, but he derailed Flynn from the beginning. So don't expect much from Pence.
No.
From Moon Swan, Silverlight, a £5 super chat. I'm honestly baffled at why the EU is seeking an alliance with China. China is the one country that would end people's freedoms at a drop of a hat. They'll end our freedoms. Moon Swan, Silverlight, not the EU elite's freedoms.
Well, that's exactly the point. I mean, they're going to do very well out of this. I mean, from their point of view, or so they think. And that's the other thing about, there's a huge amount of wishful thinking and delusion about this, but always there's this idea that you can form an economic relationship with China and it will all work out incredibly well for you because you can build your factories there and repatriate the profits, and of course for some people that's exactly what will happen. So we'll start to see Daimler factories transferred from Germany to China. Well, I'm not sure that's going to happen because Germans did try to cling on to their factories, but we'll be seeing a lot of that going on. And it's money. Ultimately, some people expect and hope to make an awful lot of money from this. And this is what drives it. And can I just say, we had those questions earlier in this program about conflicts between Germany and France. The French are known to have been very wary of this deal. It was again the Germans who pushed it.
Yeah, it's always about the money. Always.
It's always follow the money.
Yep. Let's see here. Where are we? Sparky says Pence's lawyer said he would play ball with Gomer, not Pence. Pence has plausible deniability, but he's Paul Ryan's friend, so I'm pessimistic.
Yeah, so am I.
Paul Ryan is not like, Paul Ryan despises Trump.
Oh, I'm not pessimistic. I'm realistic about Pence. Obviously, he's his own man. He can do all kinds of things. He might surprise us, but I really think that anybody who has expectations of Pence doing anything unusual and should be very careful, because I expect he's going to disappoint all those hopes.
Valley S, $20 super chat. Thank you very much, Valley S, for that super chat. From Flying Boar, I don't get it. The EU want Ukraine to sever ties with Russia, but want Russian money and gas. You can't have it both ways.
Well, that's absolutely right. And again, the Russians, there's been an extraordinary cascade of comments coming out of Moscow over the last few weeks. And many of them, by the way, expressed by Sergei Lavrov, who is the foreign minister, who's always been seen as one of the more pro-EU figures within the Russian political system. But they have made it increasingly clear, the Russians have made it increasingly clear, that they find any kind of dealings with the EU itself absolutely hopeless, and that they really don't want to have any more to do with it, because they will cut deals to the extent that they can, and when it's in their own interests. But whatever illusions they once had of forming a bridge between China and the EU and doing deals with the EU and the greater Eurasia project that Putin once spoke about, I think that's all turned to dust. I think they've seen the EU and they've seen that the EU helps itself. It wants Russian gas, wants Russian investment. At the same time, they want to be able to lecture the Russians about this and that. They want to interfere in Russian domestic politics. They will support people like Navalny. They'll boot out Russian diplomats. They want to both be the moralizing preachers towards Russia, and they want the Russian business at the same time. And I think the Russians have just had enough.
Okay, from Mark Hewitt, the big geopolitical battle could be India versus China, with the EU going with China. Do you think that India will become closer to the Commonwealth, UK and Australia?
Well, India is, of course, part of the Commonwealth. It's an important part of the Commonwealth, and Johnson has a very close relationship, a good relationship with Modi, the Prime Minister of India, and Rishi Sunak, who is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, our Finance Minister, and is often been talked about as Johnson's possible successor, is, of course, an Indian. He's of Indian extraction. Immensely rich man, by the way, both in his own right and by marriage. And he's also known to be close to Prime Minister Modi. So I think that relationship between Britain and India already exists.
All right. From Simon Effer, should the GOP and the Democrats combine their parties? The Quisling Party would be a more accurate name. The Quisling Party against the MAGA Party or the Patriot Party. That would be more appropriate, I guess.
Well. Can I just say that would bring some real clarity if we were talking about the Roman Empire of the time, the Gracchi and all that. I mean, Roman politics divided into two parties. There was the optimates, as they call themselves, the oligarchy, and the populares, the populists, the popular party, if you like. And maybe that's really the kind of politics we're starting to see in the United States, the elite versus the rest.
Yeah. Simon Ennifer, should Trump supporters apply a Boston Tea Party strategy, refusing to pay state and federal taxes? After all, no taxation without representation. You put the BBC to shame. Thank you very much for that, Simon. I'll just say this, Alexandra, before you answer. I don't know about the taxation without representation, but people definitely have the power. And when it comes to companies like Walmart, for example, that went after Josh Hawley, or big tech, people definitely have the power to exercise some consumer choices.
Absolutely correct. And that's, I think, a much more effective mechanism. I mean, do bear in mind that one of the effects of all this money printing is that the power that comes from withholding taxes, which I should remind people is against the law, and people who do it could find themselves in all kinds of legal problems. And I never, ever encourage people to break the law and put themselves into those kind of problems. But that power anyway has become less important than it was, because, of course, if the Federal Reserve Board can just go on printing money, as it's doing at the moment, and get that money accepted as, real money, then of course the government depends less on taxes than it once did. I think what people need to do is to do exactly what Alex said. Start putting pressure on businesses, on companies, on tech companies, on companies like Walmart, by exercising the very great power of consumer choice. And they need to organize politically and use those instruments, those democratic instruments that the United States still possesses in abundance, and which were created by the founders precisely in anticipation of the kind of problems we see now. Yes, there are many problems to doing that. Yes, there are many obstacles. We saw over the course of the 2020 election how those can arise, but you can bring court cases, you can monitor things, you can keep things under close observation, you can put pressure on officials, you can do all sorts of things, all fully within the law. And I have to say, I think they're more effective in the end.
All right, from Flying Boar, what Russia needs to do is give Syria S-400s, because they will be attacked from all over: Israel, Turkey, and a U.S. coalition.
Well, I think that the Russians are not prepared at the moment to sell S-400 missiles to Syria. What I think they're more likely to do is to reinforce their own military position in Syria. And in fact, I think that some of those steps are already being taken. By the way, there's been more news coming out of Idlib province, and it seems that the Russian, or rather the Syrians, are now literally, at the outskirts now of Idlib city. So it's gradually falling into place there, and the Turkish troops have been withdrawing from ever more places in southern Idlib and elsewhere. They've been pulling back this is Turkish regular troops. They've been pulling back from more and more of them.
Okay. From Mindman0075, do you think governments will try to impose mandatory shots? Will they use coercion by preventing people to travel internationally? Aren't both illegal under international law? Thanks, gents.
Very good question. I'm not,
yes, they will.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, they will. And I mean, we've already been hearing announcements about this, and there's already been talk about that kind of thing. Is it against international law? I'm going to make a guess here, which is that I think it probably is. Obviously, what you're looking at is things like, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, the European Convention on Human Rights, all those sorts of various instruments. I need to look at this more carefully, but I think that if you start putting those kind of restrictions on people, I think it might be contrary to international human rights law, and therefore contrary to international law. But, it's something that I haven't researched. I perhaps should do, in fact, and definitely will. And I think that's probably where we're heading to anyway.
Yeah, the first person that is denied entry onto a plane because they don't have the app, which has the green light, which says they've taken the shot, that person should take it to court. And that'll be a defining moment.
Absolutely. I mean, can I just make an observation here, which is, of course, that there's all these freedom of movement provisions within the European treaties. So if you start putting restrictions on people moving around Europe, will that violate the treaties?
They already have restrictions, so how come no one's taking them to court? Is my question.
Okay. But you see, that's the point about those restrictions, is that they apply to everybody. And if you start imposing restrictions on some people but not on others, it's either all or no one. That's an important.
What do you mean by everybody? Can I push back a little, because I'm trying to understand what you mean by everybody.
Yes.
Like when I close a ticket to go to say to go from Greece to Germany. Germany has a list of some countries where they require a test, where they require documentation. Then they have some countries which are green lit and you don't need anything. So it's different across each country. It's not really a level, field where they say everyone in the European Union can't go anywhere.
Yes, no, I understand that. But look, if you have a situation where you have rules that apply to some Cypriots flying to Germany, but not others, then you start entering into questions of discrimination. And that is where I think all kinds of legal challenges are going to come. Also, if you start allowing people who have certain apps to move freely around, and this is across the union, but not people who don't have those apps. In other words, you're applying things in a discriminatory way at a different level. That may also be contrary to EU laws. Also, I haven't researched this, but I can certainly see that there may be legal problems of a kind which the European lawyers haven't really thought through up to now. Of course, one has to quickly qualify all of this, which is to say that, as we've seen on so many issues, the European Union picks its laws as it chooses. It's one of there's lots of things. I mean, QE, for example. I would question whether QE is actually legal. I would question whether cutting off the Greek banks in 2015 was legal. And yet, the European Union did both of those things. So it has a very, shall we say, shall we say that it's able to pick and choose which of its laws it observes and which it doesn't.
There's no accountability.
Yes.
EU people, the people in the EU aren't accountable to anybody. Ursula von der Leyen isn't accountable to anybody. Maybe the people love her, but she's not accountable to the citizens of Italy.
No. I mean, nobody's elected her to be president of the Commission. That's absolutely true. No one. I mean, that's the problem. And when you're dealing with an institution like the European Court of Justice, it's quite striking how its judges tend to follow whatever the mainstream EU view is on any specific issue.
The UK, and I'll get back to the super chats real quick, but one final question. The UK, about like 3 weeks ago, they actually had a provision where they said that people arriving, politicians, athletes, famous actors and movie star celebrities that arrived into the UK did not need to provide any type of PCR tests or any documentation or anything like that. Wouldn't that be considered discrimination in the UK?
Possibly. I really do need to look at this because it's an area of law which I think is going to be evolving rapidly over the next year or so, as these things are all rolled out. And of course, if different countries start to apply different rules, then that's also going to create a legal minefield. So we really do need to look at all of this.
Yeah. Good time to be a lawyer in this field, in this type of field, I would imagine.
I'm afraid large fortunes are going to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get back to the super chats from Sparky. Many in the U.S. say they won't fight for Trump for fear of unrest, but we've already had a year of unrest.
Oh, absolutely.
Victims of the mainstream media and or wimps.
Absolutely correct. I mean, there's all kinds of of course, it's a question of how you fight. Turning up, 6 million people turning up and protesting peacefully is a form of political struggle which should not be underestimated. In fact, in some ways, it's the most powerful way of fighting. People who are, one needs to understand that far more effective in changing things for 6 million people to protest peacefully than for 50,000 to protest violently. If you have 50,000 people protesting violently, you will create far more opposition to you. You will lose support, and you will also find that the powers in authority will have the opportunity then to stamp you out, because they'll be able to say truthfully that you're breaking the law. If you protest peacefully, if 6 million people come out and peacefully and lawfully protest, then, as I said, the political system shakes.
All right, from Sparky, people forget that JFK was Nixon's best friend as far as friends of Nixon go, and even more anti-communist, so Nixon didn't feel so bad losing to JFK.
Well, there's a lot of truth in this. Of course, people always, there's a lot of myths about JFK, but JFK was a very strong anti-communist in the 1950s. And I think I'm right in saying that either he or Robert Kennedy were two of the only important political figures who attended Joe McCarthy's funeral.
Yeah, true. Life of Brian, we need an update of Radical Chic with Leonard Bernstein replaced by a random HR supervisors. Would it be funnier than the original or just sad?
Well, sad, I suspect.
All right. Thank you very much for that super chat. From Sparky, Klaus Schwab is right out of central casting. Oh, yes.
He absolutely is. I mean, the cat. Absolutely, he just needs the cap and the Nehru jacket. He looks perfect.
There's images of him in some funky outfits, though. They're really weird outfits. All right, from Flying Boar, update on Serbia. What will happen to it in a Biden presidency? Very
good question. Now, there's actually been some rather interesting polling coming out of Serbia, and it shows that Serb people are becoming, if anything, rather more nationalistic and patriotic, and especially, interestingly enough, young people. So again, we see a Serb elite many of whose members are very, very drawn to the EU. And we see the beginnings of a popular backlash there. I have to say that the polling surprised me, because it was contrary to what I had understood to be the case. But to be very clear, Biden, the EU, are going to redouble or treble their pressure on Serbia over the next few years. They want Serbia to drop its claims to Kosovo, accept Bosnia joining the EU and NATO, and they want eventually Serbia to do the same under a pro-Western government. That's the agenda they have for Serbia. It's interesting that more people in Serbia are opposing it.
All right. Pilgrim Media says, Happy New Year's. You're an inspiration to me. Thank you very much for that super chat. Pilgrim Media. From Person of the Year, Svatinek says, Happy New Year's, guys. Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you. Lisa Lister says, super sticker, #1 fan. Thank you very much, Lisa, for that super sticker. From Sparky, in the event Trump doesn't prevail, he's positioned to begin a replacement political party. Can even reach out to progressives who Bernie sold out. Well said.
Absolutely true. That is completely right. By the way, even the Washington Examiner, which is about as establishment Republican as it gets, spoke of Trump as the prospective leader of the opposition. Quite a comment when you think about it. But you're absolutely right. He can reach out to genuine progressives and also, well, everybody who cares about democracy and liberty and all those things.
Yeah. Falvey Pollard says, establishment hates Truthful 10 as much as Trump. If he ever wants nomination, he must back Trump hard. Perhaps our only hope. I believe Ted Cruz is who referring to.
I think so. I think that's right. Yes.
Truthful 10, yeah. Well, yeah, he's backed Trump. I don't think as much as say like Rand Paul or Josh Hawley, but he's up there.
Absolutely, and he was prepared to argue the case in the Supreme Court, which was quite interesting, given that he's somebody who's been talked about as a possible Supreme Court justice one day,
or maybe a 2024 candidate. We don't know.
We don't know.
From Flying Boar, what will happen with Greece and Turkey under Biden? Whose side will he be on?
Oh, very good question. I learnt, interestingly, from Cavusoglu, who is the Turkish foreign minister, that the US and Turkey have now created a joint committee to review the whole S-400 issue. I think, in the end, if there's a possible way of Turkey and the US reconciling, both the Turks and the US under Biden will do it.
Let me rephrase that question, Alexandra, so you can answer it properly. We could get a correct answer.
Yeah.
Forget about Biden. What would an Obama administration mean for Greece and Turkey? And there you'll get your answer as to which way the White House will fall. Because which way would Obama handle it?
Well, he'll go with Turkey. I mean, of that, there's no question at the end of the day.
I think that's
it's always the way. Ultimately, it's always the way that the United States ultimately comes down in the end, it seems to me. So think, by the way, that Greeks haven't understood.
No, they have not, and they never will.
They never will.
Moonswan Silverlight, where are we? Yes, Moonswan Silverlight says, all this forced shot stuff makes me feel like life is no longer worth living anymore, especially since our freedoms are being eroded away now. We'll be fine. We will be fine.
We will be fine.
Please don't worry. They will not. They will not
prevail. I said, there'll be a struggle, but in the long term, I'm optimistic.
There'll be a struggle, and mainstream media. I see the news here, and it's just nonstop. Even here in this small little country, it is nonstop propaganda. Just view it as that, nonstop propaganda. The fact that they're going so hard on this means that they are losing and they're panicking.
Exactly.
So it'll take time, but everything is going to be okay. We will prevail. From Marley Bedford says, super sticker, you are amazing. Thank you very much for that super sticker. From Sparky, I have a hunch that the Trump shots will help against colds in general, I may get it at the VA hospital before infertility agents are installed. Oh my God.
Well, what to say?
What to say? That's a great super chat. Thank you very much, Sparky, for that. From Flying Boar says, "Are you guys following Jimmy Dore war of words with fake progressives like the Young Turks?" I am, actually. It's
I think Alex actually follows Jimmy Dore more than me, but
there's a war. Because you mentioned progressives. It's exactly, you mentioned, actually you didn't say progressives. You said with the question about Trump and having a party that'll reach out to progressives, you put the word real progressives in there.
Real progressives.
Yeah. There's a difference between real progressives and progressives like Ilhan Omar or AOC or the Young Turks, which are not
exactly.
Elizabeth Warren calls herself a progressive. Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton called herself a progressive.
Of course, they all do. I mean, it's one of those things that everybody. It's one of those labels everybody. Sort of, all these people attach to themselves. It doesn't really mean very much. But Jimmy Dore is somebody certainly I would be curious to see what he has to say about the Young Turks. Actually.
He's going after the Young Turks because they're not real progressives, and he used to work there. But it's an interesting word that they chose, progressives. Absolutely. As well. No one ever calls them out on the word that they chose.
Yes.
What does it really mean to be progressive?
Yes.
I don't know. It's a scary word if you ask me.
Well, indeed, exactly. I mean, it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
I mean, it's in and of itself, it means nothing.
Being progressive isn't always a positive thing.
Well, of course not. Absolutely not.
From Simon Ennifer, would Alex and Alexander bet on the GOP still existing after the 2022 midterms?
Well, it depends a lot on the GOP. I mean, I noticed that in a recent tweet, Trump spoke about GOP committing suicide. I mean, he was talking about the yes. So he was talking about the checks and things of that kind. But I think if the GOP plays its cards well, understands what Trump represents, puts behind it the sort of Mitch McConnell style, Paul Ryan style politics, I think it has a very strong future. But of course, if he doesn't do that, then it could very easily fall apart.
Mm-hmm. And where are we here? From Flying Boar, EU deal with China and Biden presidency. What will happen to India?
Well, what will indeed happen to India? Now, I'm going to be straightforward. I am not a huge expert on Indian affairs. I haven't followed India very closely. I mean, I know many people from India, and long ago, I was very interested in an academic sense in Indian philosophy and those things, but I don't really know very much about India. What I would say is this: it is a rising power. It's going through many, many problems. It's also a very big country. It's got many talented people. I think that over time, it will sort out its problems too. And it's got a lot of goodwill around the world. But at the moment, the geopolitical situation does not look favorable towards it. I mean, we've now seen Russia being pulled into China's orbit. That's a subject that we need to talk about perhaps a bit more. And we see the United States under Biden looking increasingly as if it wants a kind of rapprochement with China too, and the EU also. So at the moment, India does look a bit isolated.
Okay, from JJHW, the doctor's trial at Nuremberg determined that informed consent is required, making forced experimental vaccination a crime against humanity.
Well, there you go. So, I mean, again, I would obviously need to look at that authority, but of course, if it's there, then it's something we need to look at too. I mean, several governments, including, by the way, the Russian, have said that they're not prepared to go down the route of forced vaccination. Of course, they can say that, and they can force people to vaccinate in all kinds of ways. They can put pressure on them to do it. But, if that was said at Nuremberg, well, the Nuremberg principles are universally understood to be the bedrock of international law.
All right, from Irish Partisan, Bulgaria 10. Do you think Trump will pardon Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, and Julian Assange? Happy New Year, and Happy New Year to you, Irish Partisan. Guys, check out his channel, and it is awesome. I really love the content that you're putting out there, Irish Partisan, and I gotta make my way to Belarus.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. Looks awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Alexandra.
I hope, I wish, I'm not sure it will happen. It hasn't happened yet. We'll see. Julian Assange, the extradition hearing, the decision comes out on the 4th of January, by the way. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what decisions Trump makes. I hope he does do those things. There's enormous pressure on him not to. There was an absolutely outrageous article about Snowden on National Review. So, you know, the establishment Republicans are really putting immense pressure on Trump not to pardon Snowden. I'm sure the same is true with Assange, and of course Chelsea Manning too.
What's the worst that can happen if he does it?
Well, goodness knows. I would have thought it can only work well for him. That's my own personal view. They'll criticize him, but what does he have to lose?
What does he have to lose if he pardons Snowden and Assange and Manning?
I agree. I would have thought he'd win much more support than he would lose. That's my own view, anyway.
Yeah, well, we'll still have time. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Person of the year. My hunch is that we'll, depending on what happens on the 6th of January, Alexander, I think that's where we'll see how far Trump will go.
Yes.
The parties.
Yes, I agree.
All right. Person of the year, Svatinek. Looking at Alexander's background in all those books, I understand why Alexander is so intelligent.
Well, well, that's very kind.
Very kind. Thank you very much for that super chat. And from Flying Boar, German foreign minister is Heiko Maas got to be the dumbest diplomat by anti-Russian comments.
Absolutely. I think he's been a disastrous foreign minister. I mean, German diplomacy at some levels has actually been reasonably good. And of course, if you go back to a bit earlier, to the times of Willy Brandt and Helmut Schmidt, I mean, it was outstanding. And it's really astonishing to see how inept Heiko Maas has been. As I said, he's clearly got ambitions to be Chancellor. That is absolutely no doubt. And I think he's completely lost track or lost understanding of the kind of words a German foreign minister needs to use, especially in a relation as fraught as the one is with Russia. I mean, bear in mind, there are lots and lots of Russians who have very vivid memories of the war, if not personal memories, then memories because their parents and grandparents have told them about it.
Yep. Let's see, where are we? What do you from Jamie Parker? What do you think? What do you think Boris giving Blair, Gordon Brown, Cameron, and Theresa May a knighthood?
Well, I think it'd be an awful idea. I haven't heard it happening. Well, indeed. Well, in theory, an ex-prime minister shouldn't just be given a knighthood; they should be given a peerage. So it'd be Lord Blair.
Someone is at your door.
Somebody's at my door. I better. Well, carry on. Let's carry on. I think my wife will deal with it. So let's.
Okay, we'll add to this question from Flying Boar. Will Lukashenko stop playing Russia against the West?
Well, Lukashenko has been saved by the Russians. So I think that's so at the moment he's very, very dependent on them, and he's on very bad terms with the EU. He's on bad terms with Ukraine, by the way, which previously he tried to be on good terms with. So he's got all sorts of problems now. I think if he has to be realistic, his attempts to play the West and the Russians off against each other have spectacularly failed. They caused a major political crisis in Belarus. And I think that at some level, he probably understands this. But Lukashenko is a very difficult character. And I have to say also, a very conceited one. If you read his statements and follow his websites and go on to the Belter news agency, which is the official news agency, and read his comments. And he finds it very difficult, I think, to drop ideas that he sort of built up over a long time. So I would not be surprised if, having survived this particular crisis, he ends up making the same mistakes all over again.
All right. Yes, I agree with you there.
I'm going to just finish by quickly saying there's been some articles about him in the Russian media recently, in which the Russians are making it very, very clear that what they want Lukashenko to do is to start preparing the ground for a successor. They don't want, but he's probably very resistant to that.
We said that too when we covered the story for a successor. All right, from BA $5. Super chat: China will win in any geopolitical struggle as it is moving to dam the rivers in Tibet, and they will be able to cut India's water off. Thoughts?
Well, I don't know enough about this. All I will say is that I think India will survive whatever China throws at it. I mean, India is one of these millennial civilizations. I mean, it's perhaps the world's oldest civilization. So I am sure that India will survive. And I hope the day will one day come when China and India will be able to resolve their problems and be friends. I mean, I think they have the potential to be. They were briefly, by the way, in the 1950s. So I think if the Chinese start pursuing these very aggressive policies towards India, they won't win against India. They will simply lose India forever. And I think if the Chinese have any sense, they wouldn't do things like that.
All right, from Marley Bedford, super chat, just figuring out these super chats. I wish you both a wonderful, successful new year. I'm a certified immunization nurse and an avid vaxxer. I am not lining up for the shot at this time, the CV shot. That'll be interesting to hear more from you, Marley, about that. That's very interesting.
That is very interesting.
We were talking before the video real quickly about the Russian.
Yes.
The Russian shot and how that's based more on, I guess you would say, traditional science.
Yes.
They came up with that.
So by the way, is the AstraZeneca one? I mean, they're very similar. The Russian one.
And the AstraZeneca one is not the mRNA thing, or
no, it is not mRNA. It's not. It's completely different. It uses a very similar science to the Russian vaccine. So much so that there's actually now an agreement, which hardly mentioned in the Western media. There's been actually an agreement between AstraZeneca and the Gamaleya Institute in Moscow, which is the one that developed the Russian vaccine. They've actually come to an agreement to cooperate and to see whether it might be a good idea to actually merge the vaccines, so that you take a dose of the AstraZeneca one and then you take a dose of the Russian one, and the two, because they're compatible, they might even be more effective than each one would be in isolation. There was actually a meeting, and Putin actually, well, these are all virtual meetings, obviously, but Putin actually spoke at it. So it's really quite strange that this has happened, and it's gone completely unnoticed and unremarked, certainly in Britain.
All right, from Flying Boar. Thank you very much for that super chat, by the way. From Flying Boar, who will replace Angela Merkel as a chancellor?
The Germans themselves don't know. And I mean, there's all sorts of names being talked about. There's a man called Norbert, who's, by the way, he's very known to be very anti-Russian. There's a man called Merz, who is sort of in between. There's a man called Laschet, who's probably more pro-Russian. I'm talking about Christian Democrats. There's talks about going for the CSU. I mentioned Russia because we were talking about Russia before. None of these people look very convincing or very strong. So we will see. And I gather that there is something of a crisis within the CDU, because none of them are particularly persuaded that any of their leaders or prospective leaders are very convincing people. At the same time, Merkel's popularity is fading again. The problem with Angela Merkel is that one of the reasons she's been able to remain chancellor for so long is because she has quite deliberately created a political desert around herself. She is very careful to make sure that no one was able to do to her what she did to her political patron, who was Helmut Kohl. She maneuvered to oust Kohl and took over from him. And she's been very careful to prevent anybody within the CDU emerging who might pose a challenge to her. But the result is that Germany now faces a political desert. The SDP, the traditional alternative party in Germany, is in total eclipse. We're talking about Heiko Maas. He's not particularly popular in Germany, as I understand it. The SPD is polling only around 15%, so it's a smashed party. Nobody really expects it to supersede the CDU. Nobody seriously expects the SPD to recapture the chancellorship. So at the moment, it looks like it has to be the CDU, and there's nobody very convincing there.
Okay, from Sparky, Trump may need military and Pompeo support, so he holds off on Snowden and Assange pardons, just in case they don't like it. Maybe. So very smart.
Yeah, absolutely.
After January 6th, I'll stand by that. After January 6th, we'll see.
We'll see. I agree. I completely agree.
Assange, yeah.
Yes.
From Simon Ennifer, was the anti-Russian narrative in the West a Chinese-directed ploy to drive Russia into China's arms?
Who knows? That's a very interesting point. Who knows? I mean, that's been the effect. That's been the effect. I mean, again, it's not been widely publicized in the West, but about a week ago, the Chinese and the Russians, for the first time ever, went on joint air patrols, bomber patrols. There were 2 Russian bombers joined 4 Chinese bombers on an air patrol in the northern Pacific. And the Chinese media has been absolutely cock-a-hoop about that. They see this as a huge win for them. So maybe that was their objective.
Yeah. Flying Boar says, by arresting Huawei finance officer, Trudeau tries to play China against the U.S. and it blows up in his face badly by China arresting 2 Canadians.
Absolutely, like everything Trudeau does. Trudeau and Macron always seem to me very similar in many ways. I mean, they have very identical ideologies and philosophies. Trudeau obviously is perhaps the more, shall we say, the more woke of the two. But they're very similar, and they always overplay their hands in these diplomatic games. Neither of them has the strength and force of personality and understanding of the world to really work these things out, just to do them properly.
Yeah. BA says, thoughts on the Russian CV antidote drug. That was an interesting story.
That was an interesting story. I did read it, but I am not a scientist, so I can't really comment on it. I mean, there's been we'll wait and see. I mean,
we'll wait and see. But it was an interesting story because no one is talking about it.
No, I know. Yeah, I know.
I know. Like that. It was interesting.
Absolutely.
Russia seems very engaged with on the scientific level with this story.
Absolutely, and they've got a very, very great tradition in this, because if you look at the Russian health system from well before the revolution, they were always very concerned about pandemics and epidemics and things of that kind. They played a very big role, for example, in combating smallpox. So this isn't something new. We'll just have to see. We'll see how it works out. I'm not any kind of scientist, certainly not a medical scientist. So I'm not able to comment on how efficient or successful this is, but we'll see.
All right. From Sean Ellis, your thoughts on Trump being able to win his fight on January 6th?
I have to say, the odds to me look very, very much stacked against him now. But politics is unpredictable, and I did not expect senators to come forward and say that they would support moves in the House to block certification. We'll see.
Yeah, we will definitely see. Right around the corner, guys. Yeah. It's right around the corner. We'll soon find out. Flying Boar, Lukashenko wanted to be the leader of the Kremlin, so that's why he plays Russia against the West.
Exactly right. That's exactly what happened. Back in the 1990s, he was very obviously positioning himself as the leader of what was going to be the united country of Russia, Belarus. He was expecting that when Yeltsin left the scene, he would take over. And he's never had an easy relationship with Putin. And that's always been the problem.
From Flying Boar, will AfD come to power in Germany?
Well, again, the odds against it doing so are huge. And you have to know Germany well to know how big they are, especially in Western Germany. But it doesn't have to come to power to change the weather. And that's an important thing to understand about the AfD. It can make a huge impact in Germany if it wins, say, 20% of the vote.
All right. And from Take a Pick 1313, remember, I said a dog or cat can even win against Trump if you cheat badly enough. Sorry, I was right. Next fight is for paper ballot only. In any state that does not close voting on time has the state's vote thrown out.
Well, can I just say something? I mean, one of the things I've talked about grassroots movements, one of the things they have to do, people have to do, is they need to get back control of the voting system. The voting system in the United States is an absolute disaster. And because I'm afraid we are very constrained in what we can say about this. That's all I am going to say about it. But suffice to say, I think you make a very valid point.
All right, we've wrapped it up. We got a lot of great questions. I wasn't expecting.
Brilliant. No, nor was I.
Thank you very much, guys, for all the great questions.
And for your Christmas New Year greetings. And may 2021 be a wonderful year for you all. And thank you very much for your support through this very interesting and challenging year 2020. 2021 is going to be better and more interesting still.
Have a happy New Year, everybody. Have a happy and restful day. And we'll take every day, one day at a time in 2021.
Absolutely.
We will be okay. And we have a lot of great things planned for 2021.
We do.
Or to our next live stream, which will be in the new year. So everybody get some rest, enjoy the day, relax, and we'll be back with a live stream very, very soon. Take care, everybody.